I was going to take my daughter with me, the eldest, but they are still cleaning at the house. This is a day of cleaning, and she's cleaning up the bathroom. So I'm going to run. I'm going to get us some, we try to buy big because there's so many people in the house. So I'm going to run right quick and try to get some saltfish, which is called bacalao. Oh, hi. Hello. Which is called bacalao. I'm going to try to go get some bacalao right quick, some saltfish. And which is basically it's just salted cod. It's kosher. So I'm going to get a few pounds of that, and I'm going to get some oxtail right now. So that's where I'm headed. But a brother from outside of the country who is a subscriber to our videos asked a question on one of our videos in the comments. And him and his wife, I believe, or wives, are watching Seeking Sister Wife from their country, and they are wanting to know about the legality or illegality of plural wives here in America. They wanted to know because they were seeing the Brinies worry and speculate about whether or not they could be arrested for living this lifestyle and things like that, and the stresses of it. And they were wondering if that's actually a thing, if people had actually been arrested for living this lifestyle here. And they wanted to know about whether or not things fall under bigamy and things like that. So this video is to answer that question. I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can. Yes, people do get arrested in this country for living this lifestyle. And I'm going to say that the majority of the time that people get arrested for living this lifestyle in this country, they are white people. White people get arrested for living this lifestyle in this country. I'm also going to say that they're Mormons, fundamentalist Mormons, because there was a particular Mormon woman that I was speaking to. She really wanted us to make the distinction. So fundamentalist Mormons do find themselves often getting arrested for living a polygynous lifestyle. And they get arrested in certain places like Utah. Utah is tired of being looked at as the place where polygamists can come and be safe. And the reason they're looked at like that is because they have a high concentration of Mormons. And so they have a high concentration of fundamentalist Mormons as well. So they crack down. And there are areas there where polygamous people live, and they live just fine. But you have to understand, it's that particular community that is living like that. It's a polygamous community. So what you'll find is everybody in that town is polygamous. The police officers are, the school board is, your teachers and your doctors and your midwives and your nurses. Everybody is polygamous in those areas. So no, they're not going to pursue or arrest you. This is why the FBI has to come in and do crazy stuff, like do a whole raid on an entire community when there's a problem. But that typically in those towns in Utah, that doesn't happen. Because for the most part, I guess you can look at it as they're not bothering anybody, so it's not that important. But once the Utah government decides to make an example of you, you're typically out of those communities. You don't live there. You're out there in a non-fundamentalist area, and traditional Mormons do not want to be seen as fundamentalists. They don't want to be seen as polygynists either, because they got rid of that in action decades ago, probably a century ago, just to be able to fit in this country, really, because they were very ostracized when it came to that lifestyle. So they decided to give it away and not do it, but it's still a part of their written doctrine. It's still there, and the concept is still there as well. So those are the people that typically get arrested for polygyny. I've never met or heard of a non-white person in America getting arrested for living this lifestyle. What do you want to say? Do you want to say they don't care? I'm not going to say that they don't care. But it's something I actually haven't analyzed yet as to why that's not the case. But what must be understood about the United States of America is that having plural spouses of any kind is against the law against the written law on the books in every state. Okay, there is no state. I know that there's the rumor that it's okay in Utah, and it is not. It's just not. Please consult attorneys for further information on that. A lot of states have bigamy laws, and it used to be back before, I want to say 2005. It used to be that bigamy laws were specifically about having other spouses without the knowledge of the spouse that you have on the books. That was like the specific thing. Like any Lifetime movies from the 90s and things like that, what you typically saw was a person, and I'm keeping it gender neutral because of bigamy and polygamy and what they actually are defined as. A person had a spouse, and I think all the spouses were on the books actually. A person had a spouse in one area and then went off and married another spouse in another area, both of them on the books, and then one wasn't aware of the other. These were the things that were counted as bigamy before like 2005, but the law books, whoever does these things and writes these bills, they amended it and they redefined bigamy to include polygamy, where all the spouses are aware of each other, because they wanted to be able to combat that. And they also have these cohabitation laws, like you're not even supposed to, certain places, not all of them have these, but you're not even supposed to cohabitate. You're not even supposed to cohabitate like this. And we've all talked about it before. It's ridiculous. You're never gonna stop polygamists. The government can't tell anybody who they can and can't marry. They used to have mixed marriages, interracial marriages used to be illegal, and they never stopped anybody who consensually wanted to be with each other. That never happened. Let me park. They never stopped that. They never stopped those people from being together. You think interracial marriages is something in the past 50 years? No. Even with slavery being around, and even with racial distinctions being made for the past hundreds of years, people of different races have always gotten together and fallen in love and lived their lives together. America's like the only country that wanted to make that stop, because they wanted a separation between blacks and whites. That's what they wanted. But if a black and a white person fell in love and chose to be together, they were still together. That's why you got that situation, that family whose last name is Loving, the Loving family. Man, they were both going to jail. The guy was going to jail. The woman was going to jail, and and they were being dragged out of their beds at night, and they would just move, and they'd still be together because they were in love, and they had their children and things like that, and the laws had to change on that because they realized that they've been arresting people and stuff, and people still getting back together. There's nothing you can do. You couldn't stop that. Apparently we can't stop the gays. Gaiety, homosexuality has been around since forever, and people of the same gender have gotten together and made a declaration to each other they're gonna be together for life, and they've lived their lives together. I knew people like that when I was a little kid, because I'm an 80s baby. I was born at the beginning of the 80s, and my sister is in theater and things like that. She's an actress, singer, dancer. She's a triple threat. She's really good at it. But that is not her current life. She's in the healthcare system. But anyway, when I was a little girl, she was in theater and stuff. And so she knew a lot of gay guys. And those guys would be living together, and they've been living together. Was homosexual marriage legal? No, but they lived a whole life together. They had a house together, and those two were together. Couldn't stop it. This is why the laws just have to go ahead and let it go. You can't stop them. Do you agree with it? No, but you can't stop them. That's not your job. You need to be looking at you. You can't stop them. And guess what? They're not going to stop polygynous either. You're not going to stop any consensual relationship. They're just not. Any consensual relationship going on, the government can't stop these people from wanting to be with each other, wanting to have families with each other. They're not going to stop polygynous. So this is why the laws really need to be looked at, and they need to be changed. It's not fair for you, government, to take a man out of his home when he is the main provider most of the time, and the steady provider. Take him out. Now he's unable to provide for the households that he governs, for his wives, because when it comes to fundamental people, those wives, not all the time, but they'll have their different houses. So he's the head of multiple households. When they live together, when the women live together, I mean, it's a huge homestead. It's this huge, big old thing where it might be multiple houses on the same property or multiple wings in the same house. And so if you've never been to Utah, you've never seen a house like that. Just on a side note, you've never seen a house like that. It's bigger than what you're seeing on Seeking Sister Wife. Those houses are giant, but they look like regular houses. It's like when you're from the city and you see these duplexes and tripleplexes and quadrupleplexes. There's all these wings and each one kind of looks alike and they're connected, and they have main areas, like main gathering areas and things like that. But every part might have its own kitchen, own living room, and then own set of room for the wife and the children that she has had in the marriage. You're taking that man away from all that. How's he supposed to, provide for all that when you have put him in jail? It's just terrible. They break up families, and when that man gets out, when those men get out, because they did a raid down here in Texas, they did a raid on the Texas FLDS. They took those men out of those homes, and they took every child and every young wife that resembled a child. They took them all out of the home, and they arrested all of the homes, and they arrested every husband that they could find. And what you do is those husbands, in this particular situation, they weren't guilty of any crimes. None of the wives were minors, and nobody had been molested or forced or anything like that. When they let those men out, guess what happens? They move. They go somewhere else and they do it again. FLDS are famous for going down to Mexico and continuing to live their life. So there's a Mexican group of them that are mostly like American whites, European whites, but sometimes those men, they take wives down there. So it's never ever going to be stopped. The legality can cause people like Drew Briney and other people's problems when people are divorcing, and that's regardless of race. But when they're divorcing and they get into court, a vindictive, angry partner will throw it out there in the courts. I have known women to be divorcing their husband, and if they're the ones who brought up polygamy into the relationship to get back at her, the man will throw that out in court and say, oh, she wanted polygamy. She wanted me to have all these wives, and I know all these other polygamists and stuff like that. The courts will take your name. They will ask that man, give us the name of every polygamist that you can think of. In this particular situation I'm talking about, he gave everybody's names. Okay. And so some of us are on a list somewhere. Who knows? They're compiling this list. But took all the names, and they took, based on the wife being pro-polygyny, based on her being a homeschooler, and I think she might have even been pro-marijuana, like out, explicitly pro-marijuana. Because of those things, they took her kids away from her and gave the kids to him for custody. Another situation, an abusive ex-husband found out that his ex-wife was wife number 2 in a relationship, and I've talked about this before, so understand I'm telling the same stories. I ain't got too many stories to tell. And that's a quote from my mom. This is my mom always say, I ain't got that many stories to tell, so forgive me if you heard this one. We're gonna go through it again. But vindictive ex-husband hears that his ex-wife is now a part of a polygynous family, and he wants to hurt her. He wants to hurt those kids, and he was abusive to her and those kids. But because she is polygamous, the court gave that man custody, and for years they did not have those children, and those children had to live in that household, in that abusive household with that man, until their mother could quote unquote prove that she was not living polygamously with this man and his on-the-books wife, which was very hard on them, and they stayed together through all of that. I think at this point, since I've known them, they've probably been together 15, 20 years. I don't know if they're together anymore. I lost touch. But that was very hard for them, and they stayed through all that, and eventually she got her children back. but they weren't stopped. The laws didn't stop that. The legality of it doesn't stop that. You're not going to stop consenting adults from doing anything that they want to do. So that is the current state of polygyny in America. You know, if that's a problem for you here in America, that you know, you got to try to find the ways around it. You know, I know a lot of people say don't marry a wife on the books. Don't do that. Don't have any wives on the books. And that's one way. What's crazy is, I mean, you could downright lie. No, she not my wife. That's my girlfriend. You see, that's what the Brinies are trying to do. I mean, and you hear that? That's my girlfriend. The Brinies aren't doing that. The Brinies are saying that's the nanny, and that's the maid, and that's my sister, and stuff like that. And that works. But if you heard what I said it's my girlfriend. For some reason, the laws don't want people to be like fidelitous and committed to each other. They don't have a problem with a man having a ton of girlfriends, and they don't have a problem with a man cheating on his wife. When I say cheating on his wife, I mean sleeping with and having a relationship with a woman unbeknownst to his existing wife. They don't have a problem with none of that. Somehow they don't have a problem with the wickedness and the lies and the heartbreak with that. But they got a problem with a man being honest to his women and them being aware and accepting of him wanting another, and them all trying to be cooperative and work together. They got a problem with that, but they don't have a problem with cheating and mistresses and girlfriends. So it's sad, but it is what it is. All right, I've been sitting out in front of the grocery store for another 8 minutes, so I'm going to go in here, get that oxtail, get that saltfish, because that's something, our husband is West Indian, so that's stuff he's supposed to have on deck, so I'm gonna get that now. All right, shalom.